Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panmo TV and welcome to this, another collaboration with Rin Michaelis. It's our 14th, actually. We've done a lot of these videos together. Now, you'll be glad to know that we've got something a little bit more light-hearted for you today. For Christmas, we're going to talk about Disney and Disney villains, about whether or not they could be made today. Very, very interesting discussion. We both thought it would be quite a short video. It ended up going on for much, much longer than we expected. It's one of our longest ever. But we really got into some interesting detail. Now, regular viewers of mine may think this is slightly off topic because it's not really a very woo-woo subject. But come on. We're going to have a break every now and again. Do something a little bit more normie friendly. Those of you watching on Rin's channel will probably be more used to this kind of material. The video is available on Rin's channel. It is available as a shortened version on YouTube and a longer version on Alt Tech, and there'll be a link in the description box to Rin's channel, so you can go and watch it there if you prefer, rather than listen to my little talking head giving you one of those annoying BBC Two late night intros. That being said, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not going to do two different versions of this intro or anything. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice the video is slightly shorter because I've tweaked it a tiny bit, maybe just removing a few seconds, probably less than a minute I've had to remove from this video. But there are a couple of times where I stray to the edge of what is acceptable on this in Silicon Valley platform. All right, so it's no major difference. In fact, if I didn't tell you, you'd probably not notice. But I have just cut out just a couple of words and phrases that I've used. The version on BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble is uncensored, if that's the word for such a tiny little edit. Okay, guys, so with no further ado, let's bring Rin onto the show. Yeah. I've just got a slight cough, but anyway, hello everyone. This is recording. We're not going live, Rin. It's okay, but hello. I'm Ben Emily Jones, and I'm here once again with Rin Michaelis. So I think this is probably going to be on both our channels. So like, share, subscribe, etc., whichever one you're watching. And how are you, Rin? Are you well?
I've been better, having car troubles. I mean, otherwise I'm well, but the car troubles, yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, but you, it's good to get to talk to you again and do another video. You made me aware of this interesting article about Disney. 10 Disney villains that will be impossible to create today. So I'm curious. What's this about?
It's just says that Disney villains that wouldn't be created today because I don't know. I think it's because it becomes political. It starts complaining about conservatives and that they believe that conservatives would roots for the bad guy. So it's like it's so political that's what I mean. Like when I see something highly political, I need to have an opinion.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about the villains is you can immediately tell they're villains because of the way they look. It's very common with Disney. The style of animation has them. If you look, for example, there at Frollo, just above there in the title, he has a sneer on his face. Do you know? And his features are very angular, and his eyes are big and bright. He has very small pupils. Do you see that?
Yes.
You see that you always see that with the bad guys in Disney cartoons, I find. The same with the Horned God there. You see the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. He's got red eyes, what was the demonic eyes with very small black pupils.
Yes, like with Disney, you could tell who the bad guys are immediately. It's not like it's hard, it's kind of like how the bad guys are normally always wearing black in cartoons. Bad guys are noticeable because they're always wearing black.
That's right. That's a tradition that goes back to the early days of theatre, where you'd have a villain, you'd have like the antagonist who usually have dark makeup and wearing dark clothes. And you see in TV as well, in the Western, in Westerns, you'll find that the good cowboy wears a white hat and the bad cowboy wore a black hat. You see this in shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza. And I think that's where you get the term white hat and black hat from. But As for Disney, I mean, I must say I haven't watched most of these cartoons. Even when there's some I watched a couple when I was a kid, and I haven't seen them since. Have you watched them all?
Um, Wait a minute. Let me go through the list again. Okay,
Sure.
hold on. I've seen Pocahontas.
Mm.
I did see Lady in the Tramp, but it's been years since I've seen Lady in the Tramp. I've seen The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I did see Dumbo, but I didn't like Dumbo. I hated Dumbo. My sister loved Dumbo, but I must have only watched it like once or twice. Like I don't remember it now. Beauty and the Beast is like my most favorite film. I must have seen it like a million times.
It's very
I
good.
owned a Tarzan. Like I think these are the movies I owned. I owned a Beauty and the Beast, and I owned a Tarzan. I owned the Black Cauldron. I've seen Fantasia. Well, not all of it, but I've seen Fantasia. I've seen Aladdin. Um, I've seen Aristocrats. Yes, I've seen the whole list. Well, I didn't see all of Fantasia, but for the most part, I've seen most of the list.
I think I've seen all of them at least once, but as like yourself, some of them I haven't seen since I was a small child. The Black Cauldron, for example, I don't really remember very well.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah, that's the reason why I don't believe that we would be able to, like, like I haven't seen like Pink Elephant, so I wouldn't have any commentary. Like, how could I comment on something that I haven't seen in a long time?
Yeah. I mean, on the subject of, well, to begin with Dumbo, the pink elephants. Um, there's a, I don't know if you have it in the States, but in Britain we say, but people say when we say they're seeing pink elephants, it means they're drunk.
A pink elephant means you're drunk.
Yeah, they're hallucinating pink elephants means they've had too much to drink. And indeed, in the series, Dumbo actually does get drunk. I believe he is he has spiked. Someone spikes his drinks, and he gets drunk. I can't remember exactly. It's years since I saw Dumbo.
Yeah, it's been years since I've seen Dumbo. It's been years since I've seen Disney's Pinocchio. I've seen the Pinocchio with Jonathan Taylor Thomas recently, out of childhood nostalgia. But it's been years since I've seen the original cartoon Pinocchio because if I recall correctly, I didn't like it all that much.
Hmm. I think probably I didn't like some of these because I don't remember them very well. Films I liked, I remember. Beauty and the Beast is very good. I remember. The Lion King, I think, is the best, although it's not listed here. But and as for Lady and the Tramp, I'm not sure. But should we start at the top? Do you want to start at the top and work your way down?
Yeah, let's go
These
ahead
various
because it's
people.
like we're trying to talk about something we haven't read.
That's
Let's
all right.
read it. Yeah, yeah,
I
we're
read
trying
it,
to
but
talk about something that we haven't read.
we can read through
Um,
it again. Yeah.
okay, Disney movies used to be full of villains that are very much a product of their time and would likely never fly if introduced or created in the current day and age. The best Disney villains have stood the test of time as iconic characters, just as celebrated as the plucky heroes that go up against them, if not more so. However, Disney has very much changed its approach to writing antagonists in recent years, making it hard to believe that many of their most classic villains would not make it past the pitching stage today, which I think is a bit unfortunate, but
Hmm.
okay. Disney has moved away from the traditional bad guys in recent years, with most of Disney's modern movies featuring tropes like twist villains or misunderstood family members with good intentions and deliciously evil antagonists of recent yesteryear are often beholden to changing social and political values that would make them difficult to justify inflicting on audiences in the present age of cinema, whether due to political correctness, shifting cultural viewpoints, or unacceptable circumstances. These villains are very much a product of their time.
Yeah. I'll comment on what you just said there, and it's absolutely true that the Disney has changed. and in fiction generally has gone down a different path, perhaps because the Machiavellian character, that is the one who is just evil for its own sake, seems to have gone. There's always an attempt to make these figures more complicated and maybe more interesting. However, I do think that some of the villains listed in this collection here are quite good, and I think there's no reason why they shouldn't be included in modern stories.
Okay. Um, in the past 5 years or so, pop culture audiences have decidedly more conservative, particularly in the case of Disney targets demographic. As a whole, it is very unlikely that Pocahontas would get made today, with the audience and being more aware of and more opinionated on the delicate subjects of American colonialism than ever before. The swaggering colonizer Governor Radcliffe would be a villain sure to infuriate both sides of the political aisle if released today. Doing several things to Disney's bottom line. And I do have an opinion on this.
Yeah,
I do like, it's kind of like, for starters, Pocahontas is probably what pushed many people to the left. You know what I'm saying? Like Pocahontas, a movie like that probably helped push millennials to the left because he was a clear bad guy.
yeah. This Pocahontas is an interesting film. It's based on a historical event. It's obviously the facts are twisted quite considerably. Like the main character was much older in this particular film, whereas the real Pocahontas was actually a young girl. She was a preteen girl, whereas she's at least a decade older in this particular film. But as far as Disney's target audience goes, I mean, in a way, I mean, we've talked about this before, but they seem to be deliberate. They seem to be bringing in themes into their current productions which are alienating their audience, and they seem to just continue. I think they're going to continue doing that until they run out of money. That's how the way
Yes,
it seems to me.
exactly. Like, don't Disney make really woke things? Like,
Sadly,
like now the Proud Family is complaining about white people. It's talking about white fragility. So it's kind of like it's weird to say that pop cultural audience have got some decidedly more conservative, particularly in the case of Disney's target's demographic, when really, if conservatives are, Disney's target's demographic, they sure fool me because, I mean, the Proud Family just complains about white people all day.
yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
then they have actually these films are getting record low viewing figures. I mean, the box office is collapsing because of this. But they keep trying. Well, I think there's a bit of a backlash against it now because the shareholders basically are complaining and saying, "Where the hell is our money? What are you doing?" But they've been very reluctant to backtrack on this. Now, Pocahontas was actually made in 1995, so it came several years before the woke revolution. But it is a very left wing film because it portrays. It doesn't. I wouldn't say it portrays all white people as evil, but it certainly portrays the Virginia Company. That is the first European colonizers of the New World, as they called it. That is North America, as primarily evil. And Governor Ratcliffe is kind of like a embodiment of that. The guy he's looking for gold. He wants to get rich, and a lot of the early colonizers were that they were seeking their fortune in this new land. And of course there was a population living there already, the Native Americans, Amerindians as they're called, and a lot of them just said, well, they just walked all over them. They gave them diseases, sometimes accidentally, a couple of times deliberately. They gave them diseases to kill them, stole the land, enslaved them, things like this. And Pocahontas is certainly portrays this from a very very partisan position, pro Amerindian, anti Virginia Company or white European. But of course, one of another hero is John Smith. John Smith is a white Englishman, very sort of like Aryan looking, blonde hair, things like that. But he's a good guy. He's a nice guy, and so it's not that anti-white. Probably they wouldn't be able to have a hero like that. So Pocahontas could be made today, but it would have a different kind of hero. He'd probably be black or Asian or something like that.
Yeah, because it's like I do believe that a movie like Pocahontas did push people to the left, but if you got pushed to the left and then look at the real story, that's probably what pushed you to the further left. Like you're like, oh, I like the Pocahontas movie, so I'm gonna read up on her. That might have pushed you even further, to the left. Like, like Pocahontas probably gave you a taste of it, but when you look at the real thing, because I mean, there are drawings of Pocahontas being like 12 years old, and I mean, didn't John Smith gets with her when she was only 12, if I recall?
Yeah, as I said, she's portrayed at least a decade older in this particular film. The real Pocahontas, I forgot her real name was what's her real name? Because Pocahontas is just a nickname. It's not her real name. She was called Amanuti. That was her name. Amanuti and she was born in 1596, died in 1617. So she was quite young when she died as well. She didn't cope with life in England very well. But she actually was the daughter of the chief, and she actually saved John Smith from being sacrificed. They were going to kill him. I mean, they captured when the Indians captured him, they were going to ritually sacrifice him. And she then ran forward and stopped. She sort of leaned over him and said, "No, don't kill him." So she saved his life. But then she was captured. She was actually captured, I believe, and I'm just reading this here. She was held captive for ransom by the English colonists during the hostilities because they were basically fighting a war with these people. And then she was taken to England. They took her back to England, and she was baptized and called Rebecca. She got married and had kids, but then she didn't. I don't think she got on very well in England. She died in, just to say, very young in Gravesend in Kent, and they don't even know exactly where she's buried. Actually, she's buried somewhere in a church in England, and no one knows exactly where.
Yeah, but if I recall correctly, John Smith, got with Pocahontas when she was like 10 or 11, which would make him like, I don't think we're allowed to say that word,
Map.
on YouTube.
It would make him a map.
Yeah, yeah, he would be a map, like how I showed you, like that art chart. Oh man, maybe I should share. Do you want to show people that art chart?
Oh, there's this. Yeah, You made these images. Did you use Grok to make these? They're very good.
No, I used AI to make it. Basically because we can't use a certain word on YouTube.
Sure.
I had AI have a map burning.
Yeah, I'll just show people that here it is. How do I do this? Oops, I just have to take this off. One sec, Rin, won't be a sec, and then I'll just put this on. Is that one? Yeah, here we go. There it is. That's very good. We're burning a map.
Yeah, we're burning a map, because it's like we can't use a certain word on YouTube because they do not like being called that word. So it's kind of like, fine, then, since we have to use your word, we will use your word. We are just not going to use your word the way you want us to use it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, if we are obligated to use your word, because we know that what you're trying to do, you're trying to make it more politically correct, and they're like, don't use offensive words. We now got to be polite to the what the maps. So it's kind of like, fine then, we would use your word. We are just not going to use it the way you want us to use it. So, hey, do you want to show that other, AI image of a map of burning?
Yeah, sure, I will, because you sent me two. Here's another one. It's very clever, actually, how they can do this. Here we go. It's that one. There we go. That's very clever,
because
isn't it, Rin?
yeah, because if I could, like, if I had a high production studio, I would get a real map and I would light it on fire.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, fine, Dan, I would use your word, but I am not going to use your word the way you want me to use it.
Yeah, this is unfortunate because we would like this to be on YouTube. We can make an alt tech exclusive, but it's better if it's on YouTube. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
better on YouTube because it would get more views. And I think some of them, are trying to use like you did person, but
mm,
still, yap. I think that we would be clever and creative with that one too,
yeah,
because at the end of the day, nobody likes you, no matter what you call yourself.
mm. Yeah. Of course, it's totally unacceptable in the modern world. But as I said, this was like the 16th century, and people were pretty much. I think it was probably not frowned upon what John Smith did. I mean, and the movie, of course, doesn't portray him, but the movie portrays him having a relationship with a woman, Pocahontas, who is about his own age, rather than much younger. Um, but yeah, she was. She was. That to me is no excuse for what they. There's no excuse if she's like 10 or 11 years old. That's child abuse.
I agree. For many, Radcliffe's overt racism and xenophobia would prove to be too much for good taste, not to mention the historical inaccurate qualms many would and still do have with the narrative of Pocahontas as a whole. It's also prescient to realize that rising conservatism in a Disney fan base, which again, come now, rising conservatism in Disney fan base. I am calling it BS on this one
Yeah.
because of all the complaints of white people and all of the switching, white, characters to black. I doubt it.
I
And
think the probably the fan base is probably about the same. It's just, if anything, it's just that Disney is now has changed since the days of Pocahontas. In those days, they would probably just you could get away with things like this because people were more tolerant and they were willing to listen to other sides and other positions. Now they're not.
Yeah, the rising conservative and Disney fan base would mean that many might actually object to a tyrannical white settler being painted as the bad guy, even if in both the adaptation and in real history, he most certainly should be. The sad fact is there are there are many more Disney fans who would root for Governor Radcliffe today, which I doubt.
No, that's
I
that's
doubt.
completely wrong. They're saying basically, well, because if any conservatives watching Pocahontas would root for Governor Ratcliffe, despite the fact that he is a bad guy. I mean, in fact, I think they got this idea that I think they're marginalising and marginalising. I think the Conservatives here a bit and polarising them as people who will just who, I don't know, hate the Native Americans and want to kill them all. I mean, this is what Governor Ratcliffe was like. Well, he was a greedy man who just wanted lots of gold, and he was willing to walk all over any people he could do to get there. And that's not a thing that I think a conservative or a liberal would be particularly admirable. It's not a character trait that would be admirable from any political position.
Yeah, like like unless you're like far right, you have to be really far right. But that like many more Disney fans would root for Governor Radcliffe today. I don't believe it because you
Yeah,
would have to be far right. I wouldn't consider you a conservative. Like if you root for Radcliffe, I would not consider you a conservative.
absolutely not.
I would consider you far right.
Yeah, you'd have literally to hate the Amerindian population, the native people of the American continent. You'd have literally to hate them in
Mhm.
order to have any sympathy at all for Radcliffe, or be a complete nihilist who just doesn't care about anything except getting rich, which Radcliffe is.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. I agree with you, Ben. Yeah, I just don't agree that many fans would root for Radcliffe because she'd have to be like far right. Should have moved to Lady in a Tramp.
So yeah,
Uh,
Cy and Am.
No, I don't really remember. I've seen it before, but it's
Mm.
been a while. I mostly remember that song, like "Lovely Bella Noche" and the infamous kiss.
Yeah, the spaghetti scene. Yeah, but I've seen it. I've seen the film a long time ago. I don't remember it very well, but I do remember these cats, and there were dogs of different types as well. Because like the dogs are sometimes related to various nationalities. I remember there's a Scottish dog in it, and I
Mhm.
think he's a Scottish Terrier or a West Highland Terrier, and so he has a Scottish accent and uses Scottish words.
Yeah, contradicting fits. I think I've probably skipped over this one because I knew what it was going to say before, I read it. So I'm reading it for the first time and it says, far too racist, that this is far too racist. And they're saying like, I think it's the eyes. I think they're calling it racist because of the eyes. That's
Well,
what they.
cats in Disney, cats are often bad. For example, Lucifer in Cinderella, etc. And cats are often portrayed as bad, and dogs are portrayed as good. I remember that. And these two, Sai and Am, I suppose, is because they're Siamese cats. They're called Sai and Am. I don't know, but I don't remember them very well. Except you can see again by the morphology of their face, especially the eyes, that they're villains. You can see they're bad because of the way they look.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and it says like racial stereotypes, like Italian chefs Tony and Joe, or dog characters like Pedro and Shaw and Boris and the Borzi. But the far more egregious or the alarming of them is the see my Paris rude. Mm, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember them very well. I mean, there are stereotypes in Disney, but even in modern film, I mean, there's the if in Little Mermaid, there's the French chef in that who's just he doesn't really play much of a role in the story. It's just kind of comic relief. There's several scenes in the Little Mermaid which are kind of Tom and Jerry like comic relief scenes.
Yeah, I think that they are stating like they said it didn't stop predicted. They would say like, "Oh, look at the racist features," or it's like I'm a little bit, I'm reading this for the first time, and it is like, okay, racism against Italians. How was it racist against Italians? The Italians were the good guys. The Italians, they were nice, kind, lovable. How was it racist against Italians? It made Italians more endearing. It got people really into the Italian culture.
Yeah, Pedro the Chihuahua. I mean, obviously they're taking Pedro the Chihuahua is probably a stereotype of a Mexican. Um, but then what are you going to do? You're gonna ban Speedy Gonzales as well because he's like I'm the fastest mouse in all of Mexico. He's very much Speedy Gonzales is definitely a stereotype.
Yeah, I think that okay, it might be a stereotype, but I think that okay, the people who created Speedy Gonzales, I believe that they were trying to be tolerant and inclusive.
Yeah,
You
they weren't
know,
Disney. That was Warner Brothers. That was not Disney. That was the Looney Tunes or
yeah,
Looney
like
Tunes, depending on where you are in the Mandela effect.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's kind of like, could you imagine if you lived back then when Speedy Gonzales was created? It probably would have been the same progressive and woke back then,
Yeah, I don't
but
think you could. Yeah, you wouldn't have Speedy Gonzales today with his big sombrero hat and his rather fake accent and his mannerisms. It's probably you probably wouldn't get that, be able to have that today. He'd have to be more subtle if he was going to be Mexican. He'd have to be a bit more subtle.
yeah, but I think that its time period, it's probably progressive for the time period that it was created.
I mean, we're going to talk about Dumbo in a minute, but now we're coming to that. But Dumbo has these crows. You remember the crows in Dumbo?
I don't remember anything about
All right.
them.
One thing I do remember are the crows, and I've seen a couple of scenes. The crows are specifically, even though it's not said, you can tell by the way they talk that they're meant to be parodies of black people.
Oh.
Anyway, carry on.
Okay, so now we have the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I remember this a bit more because I've seen it more often. So I remember this a bit more. It's like out of the list, out of the complete list, it's one of the ones that's I wouldn't say remember the highest, but it's up
Mm.
there because I liked it more. And when you like a movie, you watch it more often and you remember more details of it. Um, let's read the whole thing, or at least the first paragraph first before we say anything. As the recent years have gone, Disney increased the sanitation has led the company to take fewer and fewer risks, meaning that compelling yet disturbing villains like Judge Claude Frollo would be off the table. Frollo is a minister who abuses his position of power and the French government to carry out his religious zealotry, relentless persecution of the Romani peoples who live in poverty under his rule. Not only that, but he's also responsible for killing Quasimodo's parents and gaslighting the hunchback into believing that he is a deformed monster who couldn't be loved. I do not
Mm.
remember I do not remember Frollo killing Quasimodo's parents.
No, I mean in the it's the film is based on a book, an old book from 1831 by Victor Hugo, and it's been made into many films. There's a very famous one with Charles Lawton playing Quasimodo, and it's it's actually a story I can't watch this too often. I mean, I can watch the Disney ones a bit better because it ends happily. They've changed the ending, so but in the original story, Quasi dies. He actually falls off the tower and is killed. And in the other film versions, the older film versions, that happens as well. It's an incredibly sad story, and Frollo is a detestable villain, as we said at the beginning. He can see by his facial features. He he tries to kill Quasi at the beginning. He tries to drown him in a well after seeing his deformed features, but then takes him into the takes him into and puts him in the belfry of Notre Dame Cathedral and says he's got to and just basically imprisons him there. Yeah, it's horrible. And then there's this most of the story is around this subplot to do with him and Esmeralda, the gypsy girl, who's this very kind-hearted young woman, and her suit Phoebus, her partner, and Frollo, who tries to kill Phoebus because he's obsessed with Esmeralda. It's a strange story where Quasi is almost like a supporting character, even though he's in the title and he's the main character. He's kind of a supporting character in these various subplots. It's a very very sad story about. I mean, Victor Hugo wrote these kinds of stories about people who are downtrodden, upset. There's the Count of Monte Cristo. Was that Dumas? I can't remember. Was it Dumas or Alexander Dumas or Victor Hugo? I can't remember, but he's. I think it was the Les Miserables was another of his story, and Quasi is physically deformed, and he's deaf in the movie. He can hardly hear because the noise of the bells has made him deaf, and he can hardly speak. He can speak in the Disney ones, and he can't speak really very well in the others. But Esmeralda takes pity on him. Oh, hmm.
Oh, like I haven't seen. Well, I briefly saw a different one in French class. I briefly saw a different one in French class, but I forgot if I came to class late or I forgot. But I remember, like, or if I was, I forgot. But I do know that I briefly in French class saw like it was like a bit different. In the French film, like it was a lot more horrifying in the French film than it
Mm,
is in America. But it does make more sense that he would be deaf if he is surrounded by loud bells. It would make sense that the loud bells would make him deaf, and if you cannot hear, then it is reasonable to say that you cannot speak very well
mm,
because your pronunciation would be better if you could hear. Like if you cannot hear, then you also cannot speak very well.
Yeah, and he does. He's in the other films. He's basically when he escapes from the cathedral, the Notre Dame Cathedral, the one that's just been reopened in Paris. He he's humiliated in this thing called the Festival of Fools, and then he's beaten. He's publicly flagellated in a town one of the squares, and Esmeralda comes and takes pity on him and gives him water and things like this. And he's a kind of like a person who's completely outside society. He's cast out because of, obviously Frollo is abusing him and mistreating him and imprisoning him while pretending to be his best friend. And then the society in general is extremely cruel to him. There's lots of stories like this, and this is probably the most original story like that, where because of his appearance and because of his mental and physical problems and he's isolated. He's one of the most lonely characters in all of fiction. He's got this unrequited love for Esmeralda, which is tragically is completely impossible. Whereas Disney makes him saves him at the end. He also has a child in doesn't he? He has a baby he gets married and has a baby in the Disney film as well. So it's very they couldn't, I suppose they had to for a Disney film. You couldn't have it ending differently for Disney because Disney doesn't do those sorts of endings, I don't think, where the central character you feel sympathy for just dies.
Yeah, and it probably would be traumatizing for kids, but you said that in the original version, Quasimodo dies by falling off a cliff.
He falls off the tower and falls to his death from the Notre Dame Tower.
That's a really sad ending. Makes me want to read the book. That really puts me in a position where I want to read the book. Let's go to the second paragraph. However, Frollo's most shocking confession in the excellent villain song Hellfire is in which he admits his lustful desire for Esmeralda that can only be quenched with murder. This kind of narrative is far edgier than Disney would ever be willing to go today, despite how captivating Frollo's disgusting internal struggle between his fate and his latent base desires. It's a good thing Disney was able to come up with Frollo when they did. What they didn't come up with Frollo. They didn't come up. They didn't come up with him.
You couldn't make this story without Frollo. Frollo's the main villain in it. But I mean, it is.
But what about the original? Okay, like what about the original book? Didn't Frollo exist in the original book?
Yes, yes.
Yes, just like Disney came up with Frollo when they did. No, like they rip off. They got it from the original. Why are they making it look like it's Disney's idea? Otherwise, one of the company's most fascinating antagonists would likely never see the light of day.
Well, it would have done if they were adapting this story. But what they would have done, the thing about Frollo is, it is quite disturbing because Frollo is he hates the gypsies and he's persecuting the gypsy population of Paris. But at the same time, he has this burning lust for Esmeralda, and she hates him because he's such a horrible person. So there's no doubt about it that what he's saying is that he wants to kill Phoebus and rape Esmeralda. That is without a doubt his plan, because she would never give herself to him willingly.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
But it's a good film. I mean, I like it, and of course it is more upbeat than the original story. So yeah, do check it out.
Okay, and we did cover Dumbo earlier because he said that the pink elephants meant that he's shrunk, and I also don't remember Dumbo. So.
Well, why would they not? Why couldn't you have the pink elephants if you were making Dumbo today? I don't see why that should be. It's just kind of funny scene where these hallucinatory pink elephants are marching across the screen playing band instruments. That's what they do. They're sort of a marching band.
It says that they're terrifying.
Yeah, I suppose for a very small child, they might be frightening. Yeah, I mean, I was quite small. I don't remember being scared of them when I saw this, and I think I was very young when I saw the film. Ah, Castor. Ah, yes,
Yeah,
Beauty and the
okay.
Beast.
This is the part that I found interesting because I am currently reading Beauty and the Beast right now. Okay, it says Gaston is a very fascinating case study for a Disney villain that slowly becomes more beloved than the protagonist of the story over time. The titular beast of Beauty and the Beast has not aged well in modern day, being an abusive kidnapper. Then she go willingly, let me get through this
Hmm.
paragraph first. Being an abusive kidnapper, that's the film insists needed tender love and the care of a beautiful woman to overcome his demons. The problematic message makes it hard to admonish the quest of a son whose worst crime was being a bit sexist and egotistical to free his captive fellow villager from an actual kidnapper. Okay, for starters, didn't she go willingly? I know she went
Yeah,
willingly in the book. She definitely lived there willingly in the
yeah,
book.
yeah. I mean, if I remember correctly, Gaston. He's what I suppose you would call. I don't know if you use this term. We call him a himbo, like a male bimbo.
Oh
So
yeah, we have that word in America too.
yeah, he's to begin with. You think he's a fairly harmless, innocuous kind of person. He's an idiot. He's a very handsome, conventionally good-looking guy who is very conventionally what's the word? He's very conventionally sophisticated. He's a hunter and he has trophies, but he's very unintelligent. He doesn't read books. She because one thing Belle loves more than anything else is reading. She
Hmm.
loves to read. She has books everywhere in her home, with which she shares with her father, who's an inventor. And when Gaston is determined to seduce her, and he comes around putting his feet up and saying, "Oh, I'll show you my hunting trophies," that works on most of the less intelligent women that he's used to seducing. But then he picks up a book and says, "There's no pictures in this." So he's a very unintelligent individual. But to begin with, I get the feeling he's just a harmless idiot, and he's got this sidekick who goes round him. You can see him in the photo in the picture there. He's got this
Hmm.
sidekick, this little short sidekick who goes around with him, clearly because he's just seeing if he can get some spare off him when he's taking
Yeah, try to get a
women.
spare
Trying to
off
get
of
some
him.
spare off him. He thinks if he hangs around Gaston, some of Gaston's social prestige will rub off on him, and otherwise he would have none. And I know a lot of sort of like alpha males who have their beta followers. I know a lot of them
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that
I
reason.
know. Like I had a conversation like this in the hair salon. Like I was talking to a lady in a hair salon, and it's like she would have her son. Her son is a very attractive fellow, and she says that whenever her son throws a party, it is full of girls. So there are some guys that hang out with her son in hopes that they could get this way or so. It's kind of like, okay, wherever girl he rejects, we would get the girls he rejects. It's like, hey, he
Yeah,
doesn't want to be with you, but I do.
yeah, that's exactly what this sidekick of Gaston's is. And you do get the feeling at first to begin with he's not really a bad guy. He's just an idiot. He's a harmless idiot. But later on, he does show his malevolent side. I mean, that's that classic line: "Is nobody says no to Gaston." So he's not used to being rejected by women, and it's probably something he doesn't have to endure very often, and he doesn't like it when Belle does reject him. He gets very angry. He gets into a little kind of like MGTOW rage, but
Yeah,
red pill rage, I think they call it. Yeah, and and so he turns really nasty. He becomes very a violent and vicious individual, later on in the film. So you see another side of him later on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I do think that. I mean, I just mostly take the issue with the part kidnapper because,
Hmm.
from my understanding from in the movie, this is certainly true in the book.
Hmm.
Princess Belle lives with the beast out of her own free will. It's
Hmm.
like even in the book, he originally wanted the father. He originally was like, "Hey, I want you, the father, to live here." And that's because, okay, in the book, the father was stealing from him. Okay, so I'll tell you what's in the book. The father was breaking and entering. breaking and entering. Then he was like stealing stuff. And he's like, okay, like you're stealing from me. And and the beast was hospitable to him, like the guy was freezing. So the beast kept him well fed. But then, the father saw lots of treasures and things that he wanted to take. And then, the beast took a huge issue with a guy repaying, his kindness with, thievery, so he's like, okay, now that you're stealing from me, I'm gonna take your life. But then, the father was like, please spare me. I have all of these daughters. And he says, fine, then I would take one of your daughters. Then the father says, how am I supposed to bring my daughter here? Given how you look like. And the beast said, your daughter must come out of her own free will, or else I refuse to have her. If your daughter refuses to come here out of her own free will, I would take you instead. So the beast says, I would either take your daughter, and if I can't have, and all that, but okay, when he says daughter, keep in mind that in the book she had the father has 12 daughters in the book.
And Belle's his favorite, but it surprises me that it never occurs to him to betray the beast, because the beast really kind of tricked him in a way. By letting him, because the beast he was not around to ask permission, so the man walked in and like slept and ate his food and slept in his bed and things like that. It was only the theft, I think, at the end, which was that in the book where he tries to take some of the jewels.
Yeah, he was like trying to steal things. And that's what the beast took an issue with. And the beast, took an issue. And then the father was like, please spare my life. You must spare my life because I have all of these daughters. In the book, he has 12 daughters. And then, and the beast says, okay, I'll have one out of the 12. Anyone out of the 12 that will come out of their own free will. And if none of them comes out of their own free will, then I would take you instead, and he makes it clear, your daughter must come to me out of her own free will, or else I would outright refuse to have her.
Yeah. But one point about the Beauty and the Beast from the film now I'll mention, which is something that again recurs in many Disney films, is that they take a character who's very solitary, even lonely, like Quasimodo we mentioned earlier, and other examples would be Cinderella, and in this case it's the Beast, and they provide company for them in the form of other characters. In the case of Quasimodo, it's the gargoyles. In the case of Cinderella, it's the mice, the talking mice, and in the case of the Beast, it's various household appliances like the teacup and the teapot and the clock, and they are animated, they're anthropomorphic, they have a personality and can speak and things like that. It's all part of the spell, which Belle has to fall in love with him to break the spell. So of her own free will, as you said.
Wait a minute, Ben. I have to use the bathroom really quick.
Yeah, sure.
Use the bathroom.
No problem. I'll keep the troops entertained while you're away. Yeah, it's a strange thing, Disney. I mean, it's a very old studio. It goes back a long, long way. From Snow White, I remember in Snow White they have the girl is accompanied by various woodland creatures and who like follow her around. Of course, real woodland wildlife doesn't do that sort of thing. Rabbits and birds and things like that, and deer. They don't follow humans around to check they're all right. It's almost like Disney wanted to give company to these very solitary characters that he knew through these old stories, which is which I suppose is I don't know, it's kind of quite touching, really. I don't know, it's quite touching. Disney himself, I think, was a controversial character. I don't know if he was because we're going to come on later to racial stereotypes, because there's several one might call Jewish stereotypes in some of his films. It's difficult to know, but you know, Beauty and the Beast was a good film. The Lion King is my favorite. I think that's the most successful Disney film, and again, you see this pattern of villainy. The antagonist is Scar, the lion, who has these beady eyes with a small, the sharp features in the eyes with a small pupil. He speaks with an English accent as well, which is, I think it's what's the name of the actor who plays him? The one who does Snape in Harry Potter. English accent again. That's not just Disney. That's a lot of American. Hi, Rin.
Yeah, I'm back. I hope I didn't miss anything because I did want to say more about Beauty and the Beast because I am reading the book. In the book, there are no talking candles, there are
No.
no talking clocks, there are invisible servants in the book. But then, Belle was really, really lonely, so that there were talking monkeys and talking parrots. Well, okay, the monkeys didn't talk. It was actually pretty. I don't know. It reminds me of those old cartoons, though. Okay, the monkeys didn't actually talk. However, what would happen is that the parrots would hide in the hats, or parrots would hide in the monkey, and it would create the illusion of a talking monkey.
Oh
And
yeah.
I understand why Disney didn't go with talking monkey because they didn't want to be accused of racism.
Well, yeah. This was in the 90s where this thing was sort of like becoming an issue. But I know that eventually see the invisible servants or the furniture and the candles and things. They eventually become human again when the spell is broken, because the
Yeah.
beast, as well as the beast becoming human. I don't know if it's the idea is that Belle falls for him without knowing who he is. She falls for him even though he's this beast.
Yeah, because yeah, I think the same is true for the cartoon, but in the book, she does begin to show genuine love for the beast. And we want to see. Okay, when I was a child, I loved Beauty and the Beast because to me, even to a child, it is obvious that the movie is about inner beauty. You
Yeah, I
know.
mean, this is an important theme. Again, this is a theme. Many fairy tales have this theme of inner beauty as opposed to outer beauty, and um, this is a major part of the whole um, Quasimodo character. He does have an inner beauty. He has an inner goodness to him, which, despite the fact he's this ugly, deformed creature, he has this feeling. And I mean, this is, I suppose, something I've often thought because. From my own point of view, I mean, there are women I know who are not very good looking, but I find them attractive. I think they're attractive because there's something else about them that makes them desirable. Something about just the way they talk and things they say. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's even mentioned at the end of what's his name? What's his name? Ronald Dole, like something like that. Ronald Dole at the end of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or
Roald Dahl,
Charlie
yeah.
and the Chocolate Factory. And how at the end, it's kind of a lot like a person who has inner beauty would never truly be ugly.
Yeah, it's Charlie, of course, is he's the modest, quiet character. The other kids are all sort of like deficient in some ways. Like there's the fat guy, the fat boy, Augustus Gloop, and then there's the Mike TV, the TV addict, and there's Violet Beauregard who chews gum all day long, and they're also very stupid, selfish kids. But Charlie, the quiet boy, he's the one who wins in the end.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like to me, I don't know. This comes to me as I don't know, tone of death because it's kind of like how could you ignore the okay, like at the age of like 8 years old or 7 or 8, I understood at 7 or 8 years old that Beauty and the Beast is about inner beauty and how
Yeah.
important inner beauty is as opposed to outer beauty, how important it is to be beautiful on the inside. And they're like saying the problematic beast that is abusive and a kidnapper, and he just needs the love and the care of a beautiful woman to
Yeah.
overcome his demons. It's like that's what you took from it.
That's not Gaston, though. I mean, Gaston is the opposite, you see. This is interesting because Gaston has this outer beauty. He's
Yeah,
superficially very, very handsome. He's conventionally good looking, and he has these rather he has these kind of like twittering bimbos who follow him around everywhere. Um, and he can have any of them he wants. He tries it on with Belle, and Belle's got more sense. She can see through him.
yeah, like how is it that I was 8 and I know that the movie was about inner beauty, and this is probably a 30-year-old writing this article saying that the beast is an abusive kidnapper who just needs the love and care of a beautiful woman to overcome his demons. Like
Mm.
how is it that you could be like 35 years old and writing this, and I at 8, have more
Mm.
sense about what a movie was about than a 35-year-old woman writing this? That's
Yeah,
just
I mean,
or
the Beast is he's a contradictory character in many ways because he has this he has this kindness to himself, and he has this, but of course he is also manipulative, and he is he'll go to great lengths to get his way. In this case, manipulating the man and sort of almost forcing him into this position where his daughter ends up. His daughter does come of her own free will, but he's sort of like got these two sides to him as well. Not like Gaston. I mean, Gaston is different. Gaston has nothing inside him really. He's got no brains. He's a heartless, cruel man, and but he's different to the Beast in that respect.
yeah, yeah, the beast. She did come out of her own free will,
Mm.
but so I can see what you mean. Like but it was like your father or you, yeah. But still, and of course, she was like financing. Actually, there's 12 brothers and sisters, and like it was really, her other sisters didn't want to go, and
Mm.
so her other sisters they hated her, and her other sisters just wanted to get rid of her.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, because I read a children's version of the book. The other sisters are like Cinderella. They're really horrible, nasty women who hate Belle.
Yeah, and I would like to make a correction. The author was Alexander Valentino. So
Right.
instead of it being, like some 35-year-old woman, writing this, it's Alexander Valentino. So it's like some
Mm.
middle age. I don't know how. Can I click on this link right
Who is this
quick?
person? Yeah, whoever this person is, staff writer for Screen Rant. There he is. Yeah, he's probably about 35. He
Yeah,
looks
about
quite young.
35. Because it's like, oh, come on. It's about inner beauty. And you're like, the evil kidnapper. Okay, let me stop ranting and go to this next paragraph. Gaston is obviously overtly unlikable, but there is a certain undeniable charm to his oafish narcissism. I didn't like it. And that
Mm.
modern audiences have really begun to appreciate. Similarly to Governor Radcliffe, Gaston will probably be hailed as a true protagonist of Beauty and the Beast by many current
What?
moviegoers. I think okay, is this so in
That's
the okay,
crazy.
like
No, a protagonist. No. I mean, who do they think is watching these films?
no, like look like okay, like read this again. Whose worst crime was being a little sexist and egotistical to free his captive fellow villager from an actual kidnapper. And
That's
and okay, didn't in the movie, didn't the father, run to Gaston and ask
this is
Gaston to
yeah. This
save
doesn't.
Gaston?
I think so. This doesn't make sense because I remember it differently. I remember him, Gaston being very. I think he kills the Beast at the end before he dies himself, if I remember rightly. Now, there's no. How would Gaston be hailed by anyone? I mean, the guy, there is something in the beginning. He's sort of a bit of a comedy character, I suppose. He is oafish narcissism. Yeah, he's a bit of a fool, and you can kind of laugh at him. Indeed, Belle does does sort of laugh at him a bit and thinks he's a bit silly. But he actually, if I remember rightly, he's pretty evil towards in the next part of the film. He actually becomes pretty evil. He kills the beast and then dies.
No, but read this sentence again. To free his captive fellow villager from an actual,
Right.
kidnapper.
I don't remember exactly that bit, but I do remember him saying nobody says no to Gaston. He's very angry about the fact that Belle rejected him.
Like, but didn't the father run to Gaston and ask Gaston to free Belle from the beast, the horrible
Maybe
beast?
I can't remember. I can't remember.
Yeah, because if I recall correctly, the father actually ran to Gaston and said, Gaston, you help me. My daughter is, being killed captive by this horrible beast. And it's like, okay, if somebody tries to rescue a woman who has been kidnapped, it's like he is trying to rescue a captive villager.
Yeah, although his motives aren't particularly altruistic. I don't think he cares. I think he wants revenge against the beast rather, and possibly Belle as well, than doing it for the sake of his community.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, he's not the sort of character he's not the sort of person who would go out of his way to do something heroic for anything other than his own self-aggrandizement.
wouldn't that make him an anti-hero then?
I would have to watch the film again to know. I think I'd have to watch it again because I can't remember.
Because it's like, if I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I've watched it, but if I remember correctly, the father ran into Gaston and they were like, Gaston, you must help me. You must, you must, you must. My daughter is being held captive by this evil, horrible beast. You must get involved and slay the beast to save my daughter.
Could be. I can't remember. But yeah, that would make
And
sense.
and if okay, like, put yourself in the father's shoes, like put yourself in the father's shoes for a moment, and imagine that an ugly, hideous, dangerous guy says, your daughter or you, and then your daughter, says, like, okay, take me to spare my father, and you run to the police for help, and then the police shoots the guy that, takes in your daughter. The police will be seen as the good guy in this situation.
Yeah.
Because Bill could easily be seen as suffering from Stockholm syndrome.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, there is that kind of like weird. I mean, I wouldn't say it's that weird because my own family's been a bit like this over the years. When I was a kid, this weird kind of fixation on unpleasant people, and people that imprison you in one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah, because
No.
Bill could easily be seen as suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Like, okay, that guy, tricks you or manipulating you into living with him, and then you actually fall in love with him. That could be seen as, Stockholm syndrome, mainly because of the context of, what brought Bill there in the first place. It's
Mm,
like, while she does go there out of her own free will, the beast did threaten to kill her father.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of a lot like that could be seen as psychological manipulation, so it's
Mm,
kind of like you could see how, in another angle, how Gaston would be the hero. Like, like you have a daughter yourself, a guy says, I'm going to kill you unless you give me your daughter. Your daughter goes to justice. Take me instead. The guy instead seduces your daughter, and then you tell the police all about it. The police shoots the guy, Then your daughter is upset because your daughter has Stockholm syndrome for the guy.
yeah. These sort of things really do happen. I mean, like when people are kidnapped,
I
Yeah,
mean, I wouldn't call it a
imagine how he thinks.
kidnapping.
And it's not a kidnapping as such. I mean,
It's closer to, I don't know, psychological manipulation than a kidnapping.
Yeah, I'd say it's a form of yeah, it's a form of yeah, gaslighting,
Yeah,
I suppose.
gaslighting. I was thinking the exact same word, gaslighting.
Mm,
Gaston is overtly unlikable. I think I already read that part.
yeah.
Gaston will probably be hailed as a true protagonist of Beauty and the Beast by many current moviegoers who might be more likely to actually agree with his tradition. Okay, I do not agree with this at all. Who are
Mm.
more likely to agree with his traditional views of gender roles and individualistic values. What's individualistic values?
He's not. I wouldn't say he's an individualistic person. I mean, he's kind of like very self-centered. I mean, the only individual he really regards is himself, and everyone else is kind of an orbiting corollary to that. So
Yeah,
an individualist is someone who promotes other people's identity as well, not just their own. So I mean, he is totally and utterly self-centered. I don't
yeah,
see how anyone would see him as a protagonist unless you were a very, very negative person yourself.
it's like, it's like what's, like what's, individualistic values, because individualistic people love individuality, and
Yeah.
he mocked, Bale for reading books. So how is he an individualist when he mocks Belle for Princess Belle for
Mm.
reading books?
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have the brains to be an individualist.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that Gaston is one of the most popular characters to meet in person at the Disney theme parks to this day.
Oh, right. So he appears as a, well, whoever, I suppose whoever does his voice would appear in costume, I suppose.
Yeah, he's one of the most popular characters to meet in person at Disney theme parks. Or it'll be the person cosplaying him,
Mm.
or yeah.
Now, this guy, Clayton, look at him. I mean, you can just see immediately how monstrous he is, can't you? Do you see the pattern? You see the small eye, the small pupil, and the sharp features. Look
Yeah,
at
I
his
see it.
smile. He's like,
Yeah, the pattern of small pupils,
mm,
like Governor Radcliffe.
Tarzan.
Clayton is another Western colonizer villain who would be sure to be incite controversy if introduced in modern Disney audiences today, serving as the main antagonist of Tarzan. Clayton first poses as a protector for Jane and her father as they embark on a scientific expedition to find gorillas in the jungles of Africa. Before long, he reveals his true colors as a poacher, hoping to capture a rare exotic animals and sell them overseas for his personal profits. Admittedly, Clayton isn't an actual historical menace on the same level as Governor Radcliffe, but his ideas of extracting the natural resources of Africa for the amusements of the Western world would amount to discussion worthy context today. It's unlikely that Disney would be willing to engage in such themes in a cinematic landscape that is also aware of Africa's tragic history of exploitation by white explorers. Not only that, but Clayton suffers one of the most grisly Disney villain deaths of all time, something that certainly wouldn't fly with current Disney leadership.
Yeah, he actually hangs himself accidentally while he's fighting with the gorillas and Tarzan.
I
It's
didn't
this
remember how he died. I had
he
no memory of how he died.
they're up a tree and they're fighting and he falls. He's wrapped in these creepers, these vines that Tarzan swings from, and he hangs himself. He accidentally hangs himself. I mean, he is a pretty detestable person, and so it's quite satisfying that he comes to such a sticky end. But there is this element which is rather you see it in the film King Kong when whichever one you watch, whether it's the new Peter Jackson one or the original, where there's these people who just want to catch these animals to put them on display, sell them, and make a fortune. So he's basically doesn't care about animal cruelty.
I just disagree with the idea that what says that's the do, 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 do. Okay, that he wouldn't be seen as a bad guy because he is just bringing things over to white people for enjoy for the Western world because it's kind of like I don't think that modern people even on the right would appreciate a person like Clayton
No.
because if anything, okay, um, I noticed that Simple, and not just Simple, I would go to right wing websites like Minds, and what I would see is people complaining about AOC because when it comes to electric cars uses cobalt. Cobalt is used from Africa, but okay, black slaves in Africa find cobalt, which is used for electrical cars. And AOC is like, we're going to use, electrical cars to save the environment. But
Mm.
then Sam Pool says, not only Sam Pool, but if you go to mines, many people were complaining about AOC because cobalt comes from Africa and there are children suffering and dying in Africa, for electrical cars. And they're like, no, AOC, you are a terrible person because you want to benefit Americans by having people from Africa suffer. So it's
Mm.
AOC who is a person of color who's like, is like, yeah, let's use goods from Africa so that we benefit from it. But there are a bunch of white people saying, no, we are tired of benefiting from, African countries.
Oh, it's absolutely. There's no way. I mean, I think the guy who wrote this Alexander. What's his name? He doesn't really quite understand the people who watch these videos, and perhaps doesn't understand people who maybe have more right wing views than himself. He seems to think that and it's a very cartoonish attitude that the left wingers often have for right wing people, which is not uncommon actually. They really see them as kind of like monsters, as selfish, greedy monsters who celebrate um, people in movies who even when it's obvious they're really bad and they do horrible things, they still think, well, these right wingers are going to celebrate these people as heroes. I don't see how anyone would possibly see Clayton as anything other than what he is.
I
He's a greedy, selfish monster who he cares nothing for animal welfare, and indeed plans to be very cruel to various animals, imprisoning them, taking them away from their homelands, and putting them in cages.
if
So yeah, he's
anything,
horrible. No one who's really going to support that. Who wants that and thinks that's a good thing?
if anything, okay, Alexander Valentino is the writer. If anything, I view this as projection because again, I will see people like AOC, saying we should, and people on the left saying we should use electrical cars because it's great for the environment. But I will see so many right wingers saying we should not use electrical cars because electrical cars uses cobalt. Cobalt comes from Africa, and then some kid is a slave in Africa just so you could have a cobalt call.
That's right.
So what I see is so many people who are libertarians calling it out. It is
Hmm.
actually, libertarians calling out, people who want to portray themselves as environmentalists, but they are environmentalists at the expense of having black people from Africa suffer. So I see many right wing libertarians being more progressive than progressive people, or being more pro black than people who call themselves pro black because how is it that AOC is going to say Black Lives Matter, but then wants to rely on slave labor to have an electrical car just so that she could feel good, and it's like, oh, it
Mm.
benefits, this society, but isn't just the whites, Western colonial society that she loves to complain about. This is projection, because I'll see people in the right wingers saying we do not want cobalt because it comes from slave labor in Africa. So people who are libertarian do a better job at being pro-black than somebody on the left.
It wouldn't be the first time that we've seen this contradiction. There's many other examples, but it's true. I mean, the cobalt mines in various parts of Africa. One of the reasons that companies that build the battery makers for the cars are importing African cobalt is because it's mined under such cheap labor costs
Mm-hmm.
that they essentially they can import it far more cheaply. And it has got a lot to do with the fact that the workers, very often they are children, they're very young, they've had minimal education, and they're just put into these slave labor jobs, going down in mine, often very, very dangerous as well. They get some of the mineral gets in their lungs, and they get sick. There's accidents, and there's none of the health and safety laws that you get in other countries. So yeah, I mean, this is something that AOC should think about, and certainly I think a lot of the libertarians and right wingers would see Clayton as almost AOC like in their attitude, because
Mm-hmm.
he's essentially doing the same thing. He wants to make a lot of money by taking resources of Africa. In his case, it's the wild animals. Whereas in
Yeah.
mm,
Um, okay, yeah, exactly. Like, I think it's projection, because if people will wonder, why I would use a website like a minds.com, and people when I say I use minds, people get scared of me. It's like, oh, you use minds, are you for right? But really, it's like, okay,
I'm on
they
mine.
are calling out AOC and they're calling out people who are leftists who want to
Mm.
use slave labor, in African minds. They are the ones calling it out. Like, really, and you would think, if you're on the left, shouldn't you be the ones calling out slave labor? Why is it that people on the right are calling out slave labor? And why is it that people on the left are like, yeah, we want, slave labor because it's great for the environment?
Oh, that's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. But yeah, so Clayton is a bad guy, and no one, I think, would doubt it. I can't think of anyone supporting him unless they are themselves are like him. Now I've not the Black Cauldron. I saw it long ago. I know it's based on the Chronicles of Prydain, which is it's a famous story um that is based on a Welsh legend. But it was long ago. I actually saw this very long time ago.
I
I
saw
can't
this a
remember it.
kid. I saw this a kid, but I rewatched it like a year ago. So it's
Hmm.
more fresh on my mind because I rewatched this a year ago. Like, I loved it as a child, and then I heard of it. Then I'm like, I haven't seen this in a longer time. And then so it's kind of like I rewatched it, like a couple of times last year. Um the Okay, I'm shocked by this. The Black Cauldron is one of Disney's most infamous flops. I'm surprised that it's considered a flop because it is my most favorite movie. I love this movie. I love
Oh,
it.
hmm.
Um, and perhaps its choice of villain was actually a big contributing factor as to why the typical fantasy story sees a demonic looking bad guy named the Horned King as his primary antagonist, who seeks the titular Black Cauldron in order to raise an army of corpses to terrorize the land. With the Horn King was single-handedly responsible for making the Black Cauldron Disney's first ever PG rated film. Um,
Right.
First PG rated, okay. Much of Disney's modern viewership has become more sensitive to demonic or infernal imagery in recent years. The Horned King certainly qualifies as such. In many ways, he is representative of the devil himself, making him a tough sell to the increasingly sensitive audience in current day and age. Not only that, but he dies in a fashion somehow even more gruesome than Clayton. I forgot how he died. I actually forgot how he
No, he
died.
hanged himself. Clayton hanged himself on vines accidentally.
No,
Oh,
I'm
the
talking about
Horn
the horn
King.
kid
Mm.
now, with his flesh being shockingly rendered from his bones on the
Oh
screen.
my god! It sounds like this is the first zombie movie. I mean, it's certainly an army of corpses. Sounds like a zombie film.
I don't know. Maybe it's because it's probably too scary for kids. Like kids are the target audience, and maybe it's mothers going, "Oh, maybe this is too scary for my child." You
Yeah, there
know.
were. See, Disney did depart sometimes from its normal repertoire. So, for example, there were some quite frightening films. There was a very spooky supernatural drama called The Watcher in the Woods. That was a scary Disney movie. That was like
Mhm.
a ghost story or something similar, and it has some very frightening scenes in. But and the black hole, I remember the black hole was that was actually a scary Disney movie. It's very violent to begin with. There were robots with like these weapons, these whirling blades that ripped into people and things like that. Um, but generally, yeah, this I'm not familiar with this film though. I've not seen it since I was very small.
I've seen it as a child. I've rewatched it. I've seen it so many times as a child. As a child, I loved this movie.
Mm.
I love this movie, and I haven't seen it in such a long time. So I watched it, a year ago, and I fell in love with it all over again. Like after rewatching it, like a year ago, I was like, "Oh my god, I love this movie!" And it's like, do, what I think it is, it's mothers. A mother is going to be like overprotective of her child. She's
Mm.
going to watch him like, nah, I don't believe you could, handle this. And then we wonder why so many kids grow up to be snowflakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that's, the reason why so many kids grow up to be, snowflakes are overprotective mothers. Like my mom,
Mm.
she allowed me to watch The Black Cauldron. And I mean, I personally didn't find it scary as a
No.
child, and I think that when you protect your child too much, they become too sheltered, too protective, and
Mm.
then you end up, hearing about college students needing coloring books and safe
Yeah.
spaces in order
Yeah.
to calm down.
I think if it had been scary, I would have remembered it. Even watching it as a small kid, I remember films that frightened me when I was a small child, and I remember them quite well. I don't remember this one, so it can't have been that scary.
Yeah, it's not that scary because like if it was that scary, you would hear many more complaints coming from actual kids. But as a small
Mm.
child, like I saw this at either 8 or 10, and I loved it. And rewatching it, as adults, I still love it. What I really think it is just overprotective parents. Like, no, my kid may not be handling it. They're overprotective, don't want things too scary, but then wondering why kids are too much of a snowflake, why college kids, need coloring books, why, people are 20 years old and they need a safe space, and why they end up being adults and not being able to function in the real world, or they're throwing tantrums. And to me, it's because of being overprotective and coddling too much. And I think it's like an absentee father figure,
Yeah.
because a father may go, no, a kid could handle it. Nope, nope, nope. A kid could
Yeah, it's
handle
always
it.
the mother, isn't it, who says, "Oh no, no." It's always the mother who's overprotective. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so it's like when the kid gets older, the kid would be a 23-year-old behaving like they're five.
Yeah. Fantasia. Now, Fantasia, if I remember, it was different to the others. Didn't really have any dialogue or storyline to it. It was more kind of like a vignette. It was like a series of images.
Yeah, okay. Okay, did this? I would agree. I agree with screen rants of this one, because as a small child, I remember being terrified of that guy because of my religious background. He seems to represent Satan himself.
Mm,
And, I come from a very religious family. And when I saw images of him, I felt scared and terrified of his image, and he would make me cry because my mom took me on church every single Sunday, and then, on Sunday I'll hear about hell and whatnot. And when I saw him, he his name may have been Cernerborg. I didn't know his name. When I saw him, I
mm,
saw him as Satan, and and then you see clips of him, taking souls, and it is just too disturbing for a child. And I'm saying this because I do remember being terrified and feeling a bit traumatized as a child because of him. Because I go to
mm.
church, I went to church every single Sunday. You hear about the church would tell you all of the horrible things that happen to you when you die and when you go to hell. And then when I saw this, it's like, oh no, this is what happens when humans die.
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite an alarming figure. I mean, I'm surprised even in an American studio would actually even put that in there. I'm surprised.
Yeah, because it's kind of a lot like it took me years to get over feeling traumatized over this cartoon
Yeah.
character. Yeah, it took me years, so it's kind of like when I got older, what I did is that I watched the scene in full to try to face my demons. So that's it. The fear of him hunted me so long that in my 20s, I think I was 23 years old. In my 20s, I had to, watch the full entire clip to overcome my demons and to just face my fears and to get
Mm.
over my fear of that guy,
Oh, yeah.
so.
So in this case, you probably quite understand why this is a controversial figure in Disney.
Yeah, this one was controversial. To me, these are different, because to me, I thought that the Black Cauldron was funny. Like there were many funny jokes. Like there were funny characters in the Black Cauldron, but with Fantasia, there is no comedic relief.
No, it's just like a. There's no real story to it. It's just like a series of vignettes, really, isn't it? It actually
Yeah,
says there,
exactly.
series of vignettes actually says that as well. He's used the same term I did, a series of vignettes.
Yeah, because it's like same with have you ever seen what's it, the Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah.
And you notice how when things get scary, they have, comedic relief,
Oh yeah, it's you
yeah,
do, yeah.
yeah, comedic relief so that you would be, less scared, you know,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
like,
you get
like
that a lot in cinema. You get that in all kinds of films. You have like some jokes are put in at certain points just to lighten the mood a bit.
yeah, exactly. When there's a bunch of zombies or a bunch of dead people walking the lands, and then next thing she has a hard time getting a sword, and then the her having a hard time getting a sword makes you laugh a little bit, or then a skeleton tries to get Captain Jack Sparrow, and then he cracks a joke, and then when he cracks a joke, you feel less scared,
Yeah.
that comedic relief to lighten the mood. And the reason what makes them scary is no comedic relief. It in, like when I rewatched it as an adult, it's like this is why it's not appropriate for kids. As an adults, I realized there were also some nude scenes, nude cartoon characters. There were like nude women dancing in the hellfire.
Oh, I don't remember that. In Fantasia.
Yeah, and
Oh
Fantasia,
right.
like if
I don't remember
they
that.
were like nude women, they were nude flame women. Okay, they were flames, in the shape of women, and then you even saw like nipples, you know. You
Ooh,
even saw like nipples,
I must
and
watch that
it's
film
like,
again.
yeah, you know, it's like, okay, you have nude women dancing seductively in the hellfire, and you have an image of Satan. I
Well, I'm
mean,
surprised. I'm surprised that didn't have like a restricted certificate because I mean this was I think it came out in the late 1940s. This film it's one of Disney's early ones.
yeah, and it's kind of like it's just too scary for a child, especially with
Mm.
no comedic relief.
Yeah, I thought so. Let's have a look. Fantasia, 1940. Yes. Oh, it's a 1940, so it's right at the start of the 40s. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised, but yeah, that's. I can see why that's controversial.
Yeah, if they had comedic relief, I think it
Jafar.
would be different. Okay, now it's Jafar. Oh,
Yeah,
and
he
like
looks evil, doesn't he? You can tell he's evil. Look at them flashing
and,
eyes.
and obviously to erase the nude scenes from Fantasia.
Yeah.
But okay, back to Jafar. Jafar is undoubtedly one of the greatest Disney villains of all times. A dangerous sorcerer and a clever ship divisor to the Sultan. Jafar is able to maneuver his naive boss into whatever position he wants, borrowing the inference of his young, headstrong daughter, seeking to increase his magical and political power. Jafar covets the cosmic power of the genie. There's only one reason Jafar, as he exists in Aladdin, wouldn't work today, and that's the fact that he wants to marry Princess Jasmine, considering that Jasmine is all of 15 years old. Um, Canonly at the time of the first Aladdin movie. Now, I do not remember Jasmine's age being mentioned in the film.
I don't think I've seen all this film. I've seen clips of it, but I don't think I've seen all this film. I know the story, of course. I mean, because the Aladdin is like a popular story, which is often made into pantomimes, where people which you can go and see, especially this time of year around Christmas. They're very popular. So, and
Well,
I've been to the Aladdin pantomimes many times.
yeah, I do not remember, Jasmine being 15 years old. I do not recall her age being mentioned in the film.
Mm.
Um, this disturbing, unrequited romance would likely be way over the line for Disney to consider today, even for a character intended to be a reprehensible villain. Suffice it to say, modern Disney would likely be unwilling to put forward a plot with such disturbing implications. And then,
Possibly, but although they did with Pocahontas, they specifically made Pocahontas older, so that, to avoid that very same problem.
yeah, and then the final one is the aristocrats. I don't remember. I remember it, but not very well. Like I must remember the scene where they're playing, on music, and then the piano falls a few stages.
Yeah, I saw this a long time ago. Edgar Balthazar. I get the feeling. I mean, it doesn't actually say this in the article, which I know you'll read this for a moment, but I got the feeling that he was meant to be Jewish. And that's where the controversy lied. That's where the controversy lay. I got the distinct impression he was Jewish.
Why did you say that?
It's weird because like Jews are like as we discussed before, racially, Jews are like pretty much everybody else, except they have a certain look to them in popular culture. They can say, "Oh, that guy looks Jewish." There's certain features and certain behaviours that they exhibit which make you think they're Jews. And this guy I thought was probably a Jew, and that's why this might be controversial because he's after his mistress's fortune when she wants to leave it to the cats.
Oh,
He's
okay.
hoping that she'll leave him something in her will, but instead she leaves everything to the cats.
Yeah. Okay. Edgar Balthazar is a rare case of a Disney villain who was actually completely in the rights, so much so that his plights wouldn't have ever been pitched in the current age of Disney. A loyal butler to the aristocratic Madame, Bond family for his entire life. Balthazar is rightfully infuriated when he learns that the Madame has named her pet's cat as the heir to her fortune and estates. Sure, his plans to circumvent this might border on criminal animal cruelty, but Balthazar is completely justified in his outrage at being overlooked for the inheritance in favor of the cats. There is some interesting discussion to be had around the idea that Madame Bond family sees her literal animals as more human and worthy of wealth than her servants, a sentiment which was somehow commendable at the time. The Aristocats was released, shifting cultural attitudes have ensured that this is no longer the case, and Balthasar would unambiguously seen as the hero of the story. The hero of the story, should his villain concept be pitched today, it's hard to believe that Disney ever thought that Edgar deserved the audience's animosity.
Now, just for a change, I'm actually going to agree with them. I think that lots of right-wing viewers probably would sympathise with this guy. Because yeah, I mean, it's weird that she left all her fortune to the cats. Hence the title of the film, Aristocats.
Yeah,
Um,
like yeah, because okay, like they could things literally. A little cat can't do anything with money. Like a literal
hmm,
actual cat, like let's say you had a pet's cat. A literal actual cats can't do anything with money. They wouldn't know how to pay bills. They wouldn't really know what to do with the money.
yeah, I mean, seeing as Madame Bonifam or whatever her name is has no children, Edgar was probably expecting he'd get a slice of her fortune. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember it very well, but I do. All I remember thinking is when I first heard that this guy was on the list, he's number one actually. Was they probably wouldn't put him because he's a little bit. They're very very careful to avoid racial stereotypes today, but
Mhm.
especially I think Jews. They don't want any this idea that these might be Jews. For example, there's been some controversy over Harry Potter because there's the Gringotts Bank, and there's these
Mhm.
like dwarves in the Gringotts Bank, and J.K. Rowling has had to do like a big explanation how these. Oh no, I didn't mean these people to be Jews, but they're these little short wizened creatures who are always seen like moving piles of money around. It's kind of like it is kind of stereotypical. It's some might say that's anti-Semitic. I personally think anti-Semitism, I think, is overused and it is
Me
abused.
too. Me too. And do you know what I really think when it comes to the J.K. Rowling situation?
Oh, she's controversial for many reasons now, isn't she?
Okay, this is what I really think. J.K. Rowling was loved. She was loved by the loved. She was adored. The loved her and adored her, worshipped her. There were Harry Potter quotes and numerous sitcoms and in numerous sitcoms and in numerous movies they would add a Harry Potter quote. And it's like Harry Potter would be pushed into conservative states. They loved pushing Harry Potter books into conservative right-wing states because the conservatives had an issue with witchcraft, so they
Mm,
loved like pushing it in Alabama, Mississippi, because they know that right wingers had an issue with witchcraft. So whenever they burn it, she became more rich. So
yeah,
they would take it from the libraries to burn it. J.K. Rowling would end up being the richest woman alive. And to me, what hurt her was when she started defending women's rights.
yeah. I mean, we were
And the
talking about
moment
this
she
privately,
and
and
the
yeah,
moment she decided to defend women's rights, that's when the left turned on her and called her a turf. And then they retroactively started to call her an anti-Semite. But it
yeah,
was
I think it all came out after that. The thing about the Gringotts Bank, you're right. It was a direct product of her general disfavor, fall into disfavor.
No, no, not to me. It was to me like I haven't heard anybody on the left complain about stereotypes in Harry Potter. Like it was only like to me, it was kind of like it was only after. It was after
Yeah.
she says, "I am for women's rights and I want to protect women's sports." That's when they retroactively called her an anti-Semite, but they called
Absolutely,
her
yes.
an anti-Semite retroactively. And they like she's accused of being an anti-Semite, a racist, or whatnot. But she was loved before. It was strictly right wingers, calling her out. Because remember when Hermione, who was white in the movies, became black, and then
Yeah.
Teal Deer was a lot like, okay, Chuck Huron said, I never said that her money was, white. But then Teal
Mm.
Deer was like, okay, I don't remember if you remember Teal Deer. He was an
Yeah, I do.
sugar YouTuber.
Yeah.
But he was like, okay, actually, she was considered white in the book. And he
Mm.
actually found, the exact page and the exact page when J.K. Rowling wrote like in book 6 that Hermione has pale skin.
Yeah, she was white. I mean, there were non-white characters in the original, even in the first book. There was an Indian student at the school. I mean, as in India, not Amerindian, and she was called Charmi Chatterjee or something. She had a very Indian-sounding name. And Chandri Banmaji or something, and it was very distinct. I mean, Rowling did describe these characters because I read the book because I used to read them to my daughter when she was going to sleep. I used to remember that, and used to give her bedtime stories. And but it did. I mean, all the fuss about J.K. Rowling all comes from one moment when she fell out of favor, disfavor. She became a pariah generally, and that's when all these accusations about the Gringotts Bank were made. And she explained that these are not meant to be Jews, and I believe her. They're just these creatures that run the bank. They happen to run the Gringotts Bank, which is the Harry Potter bank. I mean, this same accusation was leveled several generations earlier at J.R. Tolkien, because they said, well, the dwarves are meant to be Jews. I mean, they spend all their time hoarding money in their little caves and things like that. They care nothing for the welfare of men and elves and things like that. Oh, you're obviously talking about Jews, aren't you? And Tolkien actually he never actually intended anything in Lord of the Rings to be allegorical to our world. He made that very clear. This was never meant to be an allegorical story at all.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
still like again, they had all this time to be offended by it. They had
yeah,
all that time to be offended by it, but they loved her because okay, the right wing hated her, and because her books were associated with witchcraft, so people in like Louisiana were burning her books,
mm,
and the left loved her. They loved the right wing burning her. She became millionaire. Like I remember her, Harry Potter quotes, making it into Doctor Who. There will be Harry Potter quotes in various different movies outside of Harry Potter. People would dress up. As Harry Potter, characters, people would be 35 years old. People would be 35 years old saying, I belong in the House of Gryffindor. And
yeah,
she only became an issue when she says, I am pro women's rights. And then people suddenly find all of these other things to be offended by. And it's like, okay, you had all of these times to be offended by her. You had all of the times to be offended by her. How come you are only offended by her when she started, defending women's rights? Now they're a lot like, oh, she's racist against Native Americans. She's anti-Semitic. She hates black people. They're not calling her racist against black people.
yeah. But we talked about this privately. I mean, she all she said was, and I mean, I agree with her.
And now this video is no longer YouTube friendly.
Oh
This
well,
video
yeah.
is no longer YouTube friendly, but I
I
agree
can
with
edit
the
this bit out if you like. I'll edit it out. It's all right.
yeah,
Let's see,
yeah,
1 minute, 1 hour 41. Let's make a note. 1 hour 41 minutes. I'll edit it out.
yeah.
1 41
We
minutes.
could have the uncensored version in
Yeah,
Rumble.
I'll send both versions to you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we could have the uncensored version in Rumble because Rumble wouldn't care, but YouTube, people are gonna go, this
Mm,
is transphobia, but
mhm.
still, like, I agree with J.K. Rowling, like, keep women's sports for women, and like maybe like trans women like Blair White, maybe they should have their own category of their own.
Yeah.
Like instead of,
Mm.
having Blair Whites in men's sports or having Blair Whites, in women's sports, why not have a sports for trans people only?
Yeah, that sounds fair enough to me. Yeah, it does. I think we've been going. We've been going for almost an hour and three
Yeah,
quarters.
yeah.
Anything else you?
I just wanted to make one last fine commentary, on Aladdin. I think
Yeah,
it's
sure.
controversial for more than one reason. Like if I recall correctly, Muslims were outraged about Princess Jasmine because out of all of the Disney characters, Princess Jasmine is wearing the least amounts of clothing, if I recall correctly.
She. Let me just have a look. Well,
Like
she's
look
just.
at all of
Yeah.
the Disney princesses, and you would see the Disney princesses wearing beautiful long dresses,
Yeah.
while Princess Jasmine, her belly button is showing.
She
And
looks. Yeah, she looks to me like a kind of. It's well, it's not. It's a traditional Middle Eastern look. She's essentially like a belly dancer. That's what it looks like to me.
they say that Muslim royalty do not even trust that it's even historically inaccurate because Muslim royalty don't dress like that. It would actually be the slave girls. Like
Mm.
there used to be Muslim slave girls that dress like that, but they would be slaves. But Muslim, women actually dress up. Okay, I pulled it up one time.
Yeah, it's
Middle Eastern dresses.
yeah. These are. Let's have a look. These are like the way people. There's burqas and full length niqabs. Yeah, is that these are the kind of things they wear.
Yeah, these are the types of things that Muslim women would have actually worn. So being, a Middle Eastern woman, Princess Jasmine would have been dressed more this. Well, okay, okay, the bad guy in Disney normally wears black, and
Mm.
the good guy normally wears bright colors. But okay, here are bright colors that look pretty identical. Where I mean, why not just the navy blue one in the middle?
Yeah, it's that's probably nitpicking a bit with the when they're criticizing her because I mean it's simply what's the word? It's simply it's just a popular image. I mean, there's a lot of films in Disney going back before then in which the female characters from the Middle East would wear these kinds of bloomers and the bare midriff and things like that, and the headscarf. It's kind of a popular image, and I mean, it is an American film. It's not from the Middle East. It's an American film, and it does
Yeah,
include a few stereotypes. It does include a few typical Disney stereotypes.
yeah, like, and the issue is like, okay, compare what Princess Jasmine is wearing to, Snow White or
Mm.
Sleeping Beauty. How come, uh with the other land Disney princesses, how come she is the only one that has her belly button showing? Sure, there is the Little Mermaid, but she's in the water. When
Yeah,
the mermaid is showing her belly button, she's actually swimming in the water though. You
yeah, she
know,
has like a fishtail. Yeah, it's so I mean,
you know.
yeah, I mean, I personally think it's if people look for things to get offended by now, and a lot of Muslims and, well, lots of people, Muslims, Jews, non-white people, they're always saying, well, look, is there anything in this that might offend you? And if they say no, very often the answer will come back, are you sure? Are you sure? And there's this kind of like, they build this pressure on. So inevitably there's going to be someone who can complain about something that Disney puts in their movies. Absolutely, no matter what it is, including me. I complain about the woke themes and the anti-white themes and things like that, which you get in some of the more modern ones. So yeah.
I mean, I do think that the Muslims do have a bit of a point. I mean, I don't agree with everything that they're saying, but I do realize that, like, even, okay, like, okay, let's just say that a white woman were to walk around with her belly button showing, and we're talking about to the mall. I would go on Twitter and see people who are right wing that would call her a slut or whore,
Mm.
for being
Yeah.
scantily clad. At least in America. At least in America. Maybe not in Asian, but it's kind of like they'll be like, put some clothes on. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like it's kind of a lot like Middle Eastern countries tend to be highly conservative. So it's kind of like, it would be like they end up comparing, like, so it's like, how come, Snow White gets to wear a longer, pretty dress, and Cinderella gets to have a long, pretty dress, and Princess Belle gets to have a long, pretty dress. But, Princess Jasmine doesn't get to have a long, pretty dress of her own. She's the
Yeah.
only one that looks like a belly dancer.
I mean, if you look at what people wear in the Middle East, and indeed you've shown us some examples, they tend to be quite modest. They cover a lot. Even, they don't have to be full-length burqas with veils, but they tend to cover most of the body. And this is in a region of the world where most parts are very hot. There's a lot of hot weather. Yeah, they still dress very modestly.
Yeah, so that's where the issue is. Like, in the Middle Eastern world, it is very common, even for moderate Muslims, even with the moderate Muslims, where it's like they're gonna ditch the veil, ditch the headscarf, whatchamacallit. But even when they ditch the hijab, they still dress very modestly.
Yeah. Well, Rin, I'm going to have to. I think we have to call it a day. We've been going nearly 2 hours now.
Yeah, I thought that this was gonna
It's
be
been.
short. I thought that this
You said,
this
"Wait, we're gonna." You're the one who said it's going to be half an hour. This will be half an hour. We'll be done. We've
I
gone
thought
on for
that
nearly
it
two
was
hours.
gonna be. I thought it was going to be short because it only took me like a few seconds to read it. Like, it only took me about 3 minutes to read the whole thing.
It didn't half start a big conversation, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, like, it's because it took me only 3 minutes to read the article. I thought that it was going to be a 30-minute conversation because it only took me 3 minutes to read read the article. So how is it that a 3-minute article could last for? How could a 3-minute article, a 3-minute read, creates a 2-hour conversation?
Amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. But
Yeah.
well, thanks. I want to thank you, of course, and everyone for watching. And shall I stop the record now? I'll stop the record.
Okay.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Something a little bit less Hapanwo-esque for Christmas. But it's Christmas coming. You got to have a bit of fun. You got to let your hair down. Well, Rin has hair. I don't. But yeah, you know what I mean. And what's coming up on this channel? Well, I'm going to have to wheel it back a little bit because I've actually been thinking about this for a while, but I think I'm overdoing it slightly. I've had a friend saying, Ben, you produce so much content, don't burn yourself out. And it's true, I mustn't. So for this reason, I'm going to skip the Christmas Eve live stream on YouTube. All right, so that won't happen now. My next YouTube video will be the reply to comments video, with the next one, which I'll be doing sometime between Christmas and the New Year. Now, and what I will do to make up for it on Christmas Eve is I will do a Facebook live stream. Now, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you'll be able to see it. But I mean, to be honest, I'm actually going to do it in the Interesting Videos public group on Facebook. So just search for Interesting Videos Public. That's a group I run, which is which, as the name suggests, is available to all people to watch. I will do it there, and I'll share it to my own page. All right, so that's what I will do instead on Christmas Eve, probably around about 3 p.m. time. something like that. If that suits you, all right. Now, apart from that, that's going to be the last video till the end of the Christmas period. So I'll be doing a reply to comments video between now and New Year. I want to start new 2025 off with a UFO disclosure video. I want to revive that tradition, which I'll probably be able to do. Now, that I think I'm going to keep going. There's no way I'm going to considerably reduce my activity on social media. No way. I'm going to continue to do that. It's just I've got to do a Panmo TV, a Panmo radio show this evening. Then on Monday, I don't know. I've got nothing on Monday, but then Tuesday, of course, it's Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, I'm going to be away altogether because I'm going to my daughter's boyfriend's parents' house, where we've all been invited to spend Christmas Day. So I'm very much looking forward to that indeed. So because everyone else is away in my town, all the rest of my family are away. So I'll just be sitting around getting drunk with Ahmed and Hassan, which is not much fun, I tell you. So luckily, my daughter and her boyfriend have made this very kind offer to me, which I've accepted. I'm looking forward to that a lot. Boxing Day, I don't know what's happening. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but there will be a live stream probably about 3 p.m. on the Interesting Videos public Facebook group. All right, so please do check that out. So to all of you who watch this channel, call this a Christmas present if you want, because it's kind of Christmassy. Disney and Christmas are always associated, even though this is not specifically a Christmas-themed video. But I want you all to have a really, really wonderful Christmas. And if I don't see you again, have a great New Year. I appreciate your support of me and this channel so much. I really, really do. Thank you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.